Hi, everyone. My name is Linda. I'm actually with Realstone Systems today and actually forever. But just to kind of give you a brief um, outline of Realstone, we're um, basically headquartered and warehoused in Troy, Michigan. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Realstone Systems. It's kind of hard to talk. I'm talking to a screen. So hopefully bear with me and hopefully I'm not too nervous. But anyway, so Real Stone Systems, we're a real panelized stone veneer, and actually over the last several years, we've kind of diversified some of our offerings, but it's a great company. We're actually headquartered and warehoused in Troy, Michigan. Neat thing about Real Stone, most of our stone is ASTM tested for freeze thaw, so you can use it exteriorly as well as interiorly. We've got some really neat stone products and things like that. So I was just going to kind of touch on Real Stone before we jump into the CDU today, and we're going to learn about the advantages of thin veneer over full bed. So let me kind of jump into here. So here, this just shows you just when we're talking about paneled stone and what we look for. As I had mentioned, all of our products all our stone veneer is ASTM tested for freeze thaw, so you can use it exteriorly as well as interiorly. Our typical panels in a 6x24 format. And then when we talk about our quality and our consistency, everything is very consistent around the perimeter, but each piece varies per piece. So you're getting that random look without, a prefabricated panel is going to go up a lot more efficiently than just a full bed or individual pieces. But when we talk about our different stone and our different profiles, we have different hatch patterns and things like that. Another important thing too is all of our panels are under that 15 pounds per square foot, so they directly adhere. And then the nice thing with Realstone, we have the testing, we have hatch patterns, seamless patterns, Revit. Our website's a great tool for product information. So, and then we have all the details, we not just a regular panel. That's another important thing I want to touch on too. So if you notice that hatch pattern over on the far left, it's exactly 6x24. A lot of times you'll see Z panels where people mentally think that they're going to not be able to, with the rectified tile, you're going to be able to identify the seams, but actually with a Z panel, there's more room to get out of squareness and plumbness. So we have found being very consistent around the perimeter, everything dry stacks up nice and tight and uniform. And then in addition to, we have corner units, and we'll go over that, and then natural, a panel that's called a natural end, it's actually chiseled. So we have, I think we're the leader in the industry of the paneled stone, but and then we've diversified with several different products too. And then this screen just shows you we're very customer service oriented. It's the way we package our materials. Each piece is individually wrapped, and we'll get into the differences between just full bed and or cultured thrown in a box. Realstone, we individually pack the pieces, individually wrap the pieces together, and we've got lot numbers and consistencies and all that kind of great stuff. So that's Realstone Systems. And as I had mentioned, I believe we're the leader of the industry of the panelized stone veneer. Now we're going to kind of go over and review what natural stone thin veneer is and how it came about, and kind of review some of that. So as I had mentioned too, my name is Linda with Realstone Systems. And I'm actually in Breckenridge, so I get winded when I talk up here. For some reason, I get, anyway, it's hard to breathe sometimes. So, and I talk fast on top of it too. So anyway, my name is Linda, as I said, and I'm actually based in our Denver warehouse. And as I had mentioned, we have 3 locations, Troy, Michigan, where we stock about 98% of our products, Colorado about 50%, and then also in California about 75% too. So we're across the country. We try to inventory things. So that's kind of a nice thing about Realstone too. So today we're going to, as a one credit towards a CU credit towards either AIA, ID, CEC. Anyway, so there's actually a link to the CEU presentation that you can sign up and you'll get your course credit. So make sure you guys do that. And then some more accreditations that you guys can sign up for. I'll review some of that. So what are we going to learn today? Basically, we're going to go over the history of how thin veneer came about, the advantages of that over full bed and or cultured, and then some applications and techniques, and just kind of review what thin veneer is, and says that the cool thing about being a panelized system. So what is thin veneer? So relatively, it's a fairly new product. It came about in the mid 80s, but being a veneer, basically it has to be under that 15 pounds per square foot, and it's directly here. So no anchors are required. And then also prefab. I always talk about, being a consistent panel with tight tolerances, everything's gonna go up a nice square and uniform. And then a panel ranges from about a 1/2 inch to 1.5 inches in thickness. So depending on the stone, we'll get into that, but depending on the stone, it kind of determines how we can cut it, how thick it can be. But some criteria is it has to be under that 15 pounds per square foot. So non-adhered or no anchors are required. So prefab panels go up much more efficiently than individual pieces. And then this is kind of a cool chart that talks about density. So depending on the stone type, like a granite, travertine, some of the heavier stones, it kind of determines how thick we can cut it. So I had mentioned it needs to range from about a 1/2 inch to 1.5 inches in thickness. Depending on the stone type, it determines how thick we can cut the slice of stone. So kind of a neat slide. But like granite, we can only cut 3/4 of an inch thick, equaling that 11.25 square feet per cubic square foot. And then basically some advantages of thin veneer. Basically, it has the appearance of a full bed without the weight. As I had mentioned, the thickness ranges from about 1 inch, a 1/2 inch to 1.5 inches. This is 1 inch to 2 inches, so it takes up less real estate. A thin veneer is easier to handle. It's directly adhered, so it goes up a lot more efficiently and fast. And then also being that lighter weight, it's easier to transport. A good manufacturer puts it in a box that's easily transported with actually straps that you can handle up the scaffolding and that kind of stuff. So, it takes up, as we all know, labor is increasing, as we evolve into, construction right now is crazy. So supply and demand, right? So it's hard to get laborers to get on the job but anyway, less labor demanding on the physical body, and it's easier to handle going up and down scaffolding, that kind of stuff. And then why thin veneer? So basically, does anyone recognize any of these pictures? It's actually Machu Picchu. So this is actually some of the first signs when the man started using stone as actually a building material. Cool thing about Machu Picchu, I don't know if anyone's ever been there, but it's basically they're built by the Inca Empire, but they're actually quarry granite stone slabs, and this is actually the first sign of the ashlar building technique. So it's the oldest, some of the oldest structures that are still around, and it shows you basically, if you notice, the doorways are kind of angled and they have a radius effect to it, so that they're so tightly stacked in there, you can even get a piece of stone or a piece of paper in between those stones. But it's won the test of time with durability and that kind of stuff. And then, as I said, the windows and the doors, they kind of tilt inward. So it's structurally sound and just a beautiful, but as we all know, labor these days, there's no way we could duplicate that these days. Once again, notice the angled trapezoidal shaped windows. The stones are so tightly stacked into there. And then probably in about the mid 1800s, we start getting a little bit more decorative with stone. There's a bust of Charles Dickinson carved into there. So we start getting a little bit more creative, more decorative. And then also in the mid 1800s, we started seeing some of the first signs of a veneered stone. So the cobblers would go out in the field, collect the stone, measure it out in their hands, individually put the pieces in. And it looks great. You can tell, basically they've come back and repaired some of the tuck pointing in there too. So it's kind of cool just to see how the stones are angled, but it's purely aesthetic. And then also probably in the mid 80s too, we started getting a little bit more, the saw cut tile, as we all know, not very creative, but it's still a veneer. And then also in the mid 80s too, we started, the cultured stone came out probably in the mid 80s, and the full bed guys were like, okay, we can come up with a lighter alternative too. So this is when we started seeing some of the veneers. So this is kind of a cool picture because they have taken tile and then mixed it with a split face limestone veneer. And then once again, we talk about labor. If you notice, I mean, it's hard to really identify where the panels start and stop being a dry stacked. If it, a mason would do this individual pieces, it would take forever. So it's just kind of, we talk about the efficiencies and labor and all that kind of great stuff. So prefab panels go much more efficiently. And then this slide basically shows you natural stone versus manufactured stone. What is manufactured stone? Basically, it's concrete, right? It's poured, it's put in a mold. They vibrate it to get all the bubbles and air bubbles out. Many of you guys might know it as a lick and stick product, but over time it fades, it chips, it cracks. So the longevity of the life is not very long either, too. So, and then thin veneer, the cool thing about that though is it's stone and it goes all the way through. As I just talked about cultured stone, anywhere you have expansion and contraction, it can crack, corners, things like that. Things can crack. So, but natural stone, as I had mentioned earlier, so that basically they take the face and they cut it off. So you get a better yield out of that particular stone. And then the colors, there's tons of different color options too. So, we're taking limestone and honing it, or, doing the ledge, split face, and you see the striations. And so it's consistent, but it's inconsistent in its pattern. So it's hard for cultured stone to duplicate that. And then actually this shows you one of the tools that they use, or machines that they use that cut the face off. So you're getting a better yield out of each particular stone because it's 1-inch pieces cut off. Also, too, natural stone, as I had mentioned, you get the striations, the minerals, so it's hard for that manufactured stone to produce. I mean, there's some really good looking manufactured stones out there, but as I had mentioned, the life cycle of it's not as durable. You can only use manufactured stone vertically. Natural stone you can use, it's more durable, it's suitable for vertical and horizontal. And then, as I had mentioned too, it has a lower plasticity than manufactured stone. And then full bed, everyone loves full bed. Looks great, but it's very labor intensive. So basically they take the stone, they put in like a full bed or a 4-inch bed depth. It's set into a mortar bed with requiring anchors every 18 inches on center. It has to be tied back. It requires an engineer. This picture on the bottom, it shows you how the ties go back into your substrate. So once again, it looks great, but it's very labor intensive. And as we all know, labor costs are going through the roof. So it's hard to, it's requiring engineering, all that kind of great stuff to install full bed. And then the corners wrap the corners. So it's trying to figure out the paneled system. Basically, it takes the guesswork out of assembly, whereas the full bed, you got to figure out what's going to fit and look right and all that kind of good stuff. I have to take a breath. Sorry. As I said, I'm at 9,500 feet, so my sometimes I get winded when I'm up here. Anyway, so the thin bed versus the full bed. So as I mentioned, the thin veneers basically approximately an inch thick. And if you notice on the bottom, it shows you the corner unit. So we had talked about full bed actually, or cultured stone. The paneled system allows for expansion and contraction. So when you wrap your corners, it's allowing for movement in your substrate. So a lot of times, like in cultured, you'll see, like when you're driving through Taco Bell or whatever, they love cultured stone, right? So anywhere you have a corner, a lot of times you'll see it crack and starting to deteriorate over time. But the paneled system allows for expansion and contraction and movement. So that's kind of another advantage. Besides going up more efficiently, it also allows for that movement in your substrate. And then how's it made? So basically, that's another kind of cool thing too. We're taking the scraps from, after the guys take the big slabs out of the quarry, they collect the scraps and take it back to a controlled environment, which is, we talk about prefab. So they're able to manipulate it into different shapes and formats. So we can come up with, we could take the same stone and just put it in different formats of cuts and things like that. And then we talk about prefab. So A good company, basically, they're going to put it and they've got a pattern or a jig. They use a low VOC bond to bond everything together. Actually, the panel on the bottom, if you notice, if you go around the perimeter, everything's very smooth and consistent. You're not going to find a good manufacturer. You're not going to find glue, open spaces. It's all grade A stone. So it's a prefabricated panel, which is, I would say it's a consistent inconsistency because it's the same stone. We're just putting it, it's got the variations and it's hard to duplicate that in other types of products. Also too important is packaging. A couple of these pictures show, like either cultured stone, even full bed, they either throw it in a crate and it gets, damaged and chipped. I always like to talk about the picture to the left. When you're looking at a manufacturer, you go to the big box stores and you can, the panels are rubbing together, they're chipping. But if you notice, the gauge is very inconsistent. A good manufacturer, over to the right, basically each piece is individually wrapped. The boxes are banded. We have, there's actually identification code, lot numbers. So a good manufacturer pays attention to all those kind of things. Whereas, some of this cultured stuff, it's just thrown in a box. A lot of damage can occur and if there's more waste. And then this just shows you, I talked about being prefab. So a good manufacturer, the picture on the upper left basically shows you a unit set. They come together. They're a married partner, so they fit and it allows for expansion and contraction. Full bed, cultured, you got to basically, it's like a puzzle, right? You got to figure out what's going to go where. So once again, it's going to eat up into your labor costs and more time consuming to install. And then the paneled system at the bottom. And then when you're looking at quality, and when you're looking at different products, and that's because there's a lot of options out in the field. So what you want to look is the consistency and the thickness. As I had said, look for something that ranges from about 1/2 inch to 1.5 inches in thickness. The face size. I have to go to my. So the face size, we can't exceed 36 inches in any one direction and or 5 square feet of total surface area. So we do have some limitations on that. And then also heights too. You can go, 30 stories high if if exteriorly, if you want, no problem. It's just a matter of relying on your expansion joints and your substrate and all that kind of stuff, and we'll get into. But so basically, we follow the TCNA guidelines of installation. So no more than 15 interiorly, no more than 15 square feet. Sorry, I have to take a breath. I'm like, been talking too quickly. Anyway, so height restrictions, we follow the TCNA guidelines of installation, and then no more than 30 feet without consulting an engineer. And then interiorly, you can go 20 to 25 feet without an expansion joint. Exteriorly, it's 8 to 12 feet. And then usually you can correlate those with like window frames and things like that. But once again, we follow the TCNA guidelines of that. And then color consistency, also important. I always talk about, like slate and things like that. So just pull from random boxes so you can get variations of color. And then the integrity of the stone. Good manufacturers usually only use grade A stone. So when you're looking at the quality, the consistency, and just make sure that you're working with a good manufacturer. And then the cool thing with the paneled systems too is there's tons of different design layouts. So we're taking actually the same stone and either putting it in the honed, and then the different variations. So some of the denser stones, you can manipulate it. You can do split face, you can do hone like the one in the center. So depending on the stone type, it kind of determines what we can do with it. And then the different varieties I just kind of had mentioned too. So sandstone, slate, quartzite, those are actually pulled out in sheets. So depending on the cut and the variations, it determines what type of panel we can do, put it into. And then quartz, limestone, marble is the more dense stones. So they're actually pulled out in blocks. So you can hone it, you can do a ledge stone, split faced. So there's a lot, depending on the stone type, it determines how we can cut it and manufacture it. And then this just tells you like sedimentary stones I had mentioned too is pulled out in sheets. So sedimentary stones or shows, I lost my concentration. Anyway, sedimentary stones are pulled out in sheets, whereas granite, marble, travertine, they're harder. They're actually pulled out in blocks, and we can manufacture and engineer it in different ways. And then depending on, as I said, the stone type, it kind of determines what we can do with it. So ledgestone, ruble, sawbed, ashlar, castle, kind of depends on what you can do with it. But once again, this just shows you how quickly, these are actually, the one on the left is in a panel. It went up much more efficiently than like a ruble cut, individually putting the pieces in. It's like a giant puzzle. And then ashlar bed, it looks great, but once again, very labor intensive. And then the castle, it's, basically it's kind of square rectangles put together. Looks great, but very time consuming again too. And then with the panel system, there's different, as I said, it's a consistent inconsistency. So it's being a paneled system that goes up a lot more efficiently and fast versus the individual pieces of a full bed and or quilted. And then the value differences. So natural stone versus manufactured stone, depending on where the stone's from, like an Indiana limestone is going to be, a lot less expensive in Indiana versus over in California. So availability of the stone, of a natural stone, depends on, the region. And clearly with a paneled system, we're able to, it's basically everything's going to be pretty equal in reference to, shipping it wherever. The only issue we've had lately is, freight costs have gone through the roof too. So regional availability of natural stone, depending where you're at. And then a couple of other things that will drive your costs up. We had seen that radius wall earlier with the individual pieces. So small projects like that where we're going to increase your pricing. With the scaffolding, corners, radius work, it's very time consuming to put together. Being in a paneled system, it's going to go up a lot more efficiently. And then we talk about production rate. So thin stone, you're going to get a higher production rate versus it's going to hopefully bring down your labor costs. When we talk about labor, as I had mentioned at the beginning, labor is just going through the roof. Unfortunately, freight's going through the roof too, but when we start looking, I always tell people don't look at the upfront costs, look at the overall costs, is because where you should save is in the labor of installation. So being a prefabricated panel, it's going to go up a lot more efficiently than individual pieces. It should go up about half. I'd say about half the time of full bed or cultured stone too. And then you get a higher yield out of your thin veneered stone. As I had mentioned earlier, you're getting twice the material out of the same bed depth. And then a good manufacturer too, when you cut it, you can actually use those scraps and off-fall back into your project, so there's not a lot of waste. So higher production, I've seen, with a paneled system, I've seen guys lay 400 to 600 square feet up a day versus the guy, individually putting the pieces in. And how many times have you gone to a project and they put the worst piece possible going in the wrong direction in the center, and you're like, oh my gosh. So it's, as I said, the paneled system, as I said, is a pre-assembled panel, and you know what you're going to get. It's a consistent inconsistency of stone. And then, as I had mentioned, the higher production rate, better yield out of your panels. It's going to go a lot more fast and efficiently. And then, though, we do have some limitations on direct adhering panels to your substrate. So no more than 5 square feet of total surface area can be directly adhered, and we can't exceed that 36 inches in any one direction. And then we talk, and once again, we talk about the different, local costs. You kind of look at this because it says, okay, natural stone, they're all this, there's inexpensive stuff that you can buy at the big box stores or there's quality stone. So when you're looking at that, when we talk about waste and you can utilize your scraps. So, there are some great looking manufactured stones. So it kind of runs the gamut, and pay attention to, warranties, because, all that kind of great stuff. But, it runs the gamut on pricing, as we all know. You can go to Lowe's or Home Depot or one of the big box guys, and you look at their panels and they're crumbling and they're falling apart. And then same thing with cultured. I mean, there's great stuff. And then there's also, they have some warranties and things like that. And then, so it all kind of equals out when you look at the quality, and then labor comes involved and it kind of equals out. And then some basic techniques. Then we're going to talk about now about substrates and all that kind of wonderful stuff, and what we properly should adhere to. So this basically kind of shows you the old school way. The picture over on the left, we have the old school way of doing lath plaster. Every layer that they put to the substrate, they're stapling into, which over time is going to break down, rust, cause issues long term. There's kind of a new way of doing things, and I always say look for a warranted system or a single source system. And then depending on what you're doing, lath plaster it's very time consuming to install. After each layer, that's going to take them a day. Dry, brown and scratch coat, lath plaster, very time consuming just to get to your substrate. The new way of doing things, and there's CMU, there's cement board, but those are going to go up a lot more efficiently. So a system is going to go a lot more efficiently. You get these old school guys that are like, oh, I can just throw some lath plaster. I mean, sometimes you have to use lath and plaster if you have, some deterioration in your substrate and all that kind of good stuff too. So, and then I was just talking about deteriorating substrates. So actually at the bottom, there's like a CMU wall and then lath and plaster. So there must have been some sort of damage underneath there that they needed to have it a little bit more structurally sound. But once again, directly adhering, and it goes up a lot more efficiently. And then the new way of doing things, basically cement board, and then all your loop systems and everything is behind the cement board. But the nice thing about cement board is it's a nice smooth substrate, and being a paneled system is also very smooth, like on the back side. So lath and plaster, it's hard to get smooth, whereas cement board is, it's like drywall. So you're going to get a nice smooth substrate. So if you have imperfection in your pan or in your substrate, it's going to kind of kick your panel out, and you're going to kind of get, kind of mess. It's going to kind of protrude in certain areas. Cement board is nice and smooth. So when you basically, the picture over on the left shows you cement board, there's an air water membrane that's a roll-on membrane. And then using a medium modified type polymer based mortar, 100% coverage. So the guy's going to burn the mortar in the substrate, skim coat the back of the panel, wet to wet. I had mentioned the TCNA, so it's basically installs like a large format tile minus the grout. So it's dry stacked stone veneer. A good manufacturer is going to supply details, and they work in conjunction with different systems. So depending on your situation, interior, exterior, CMU, floors, all that kind of great stuff, they have the details to support that installation. Some more details. I talked about CMU earlier. So they do a brown and scratch coat, and then they use the air water barrier, and then wet to wet, 100% coverage. And then we talk about the different mortars. So there's tons of different mortars out there. So kind of old school guys use the N, the S type mortar, where there's a lot of room for errors. So, it's on a Friday, it's dusty. It's, the guy just puts puts an add mix in there, mixes it. So it's not very consistent in mixture. With some of these pre-mixed mortars, thin sets and things like that, you basically follow the directions of the manufacturer, and it's a nice, smooth, consistent mix. So it's very important, once again, to work with manufacturers that have these pre-mixed products. And as I said, warranties are also very important too. So a couple of them that we work with actually provide a warranty, so it's a complete single sourced warranty product. It's hard to talk to no one. Sorry guys, I'm like rambling. Anyway, and then expansion joints. So everywhere that you basically, if you have an expansion joint in your substrate, you need to bring that through. And then, as I had mentioned, we follow the TCNA guidelines of installation, 8 to 12 exteriorly, interiorly it's 20 to 25. Also too, if you're like do not hard install against like window frames, things like that, allow for expansion and contraction. And what else do I want to talk about? Yeah, just don't hard install against like window frames, vents, allow for, you have to pay attention to what your details are of your building. And then also control, monitor your, color blending, sorry. So it has on a natural stone veneer, basically, I said it's a consistent inconsistency. So you want to pull it from random boxes so you're, kind of getting that blend. So you're not getting like hot spots from one box. So just pull it from random boxes. And then monitor your air temperature, ideal 70, but like I live in Breckenridge, so very high altitudes. And there's a huge swing in climate change. So I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but we recommend a polymer modified type bed mortar. So it allows for that expansion and contraction and movement, and it's going to move with your substrate. So it's very important that 100% coverage, and then also, the proper mortar. As I had mentioned, the N and the S, there's a lot of room for cracking and chipping, and it's just not mixed with the sand properly, and there's a lot of room for failures. And then height restrictions, I kind of touched on this earlier. We follow the TCNA guidelines. So, up to 30 feet, with, and then you need an expansion joint. And then minimum, let's see, that shows you basically, we have some limitations on what we can adhere. So a minimum of 3 pounds per square feet, and then the maximum of 15 pounds per square feet that you can directly adhere. And then no more than 36 inches in any one direction, and can't exceed 5 square feet of total surface area. And then grade 2, I don't know if I mentioned this, so height restrictions. So, depending on where you're located, depending on the grade of the land, typical is like 4 inches above grade, but some areas like, here we get, big snowfalls, so we have to, raise the grade limit up to like 12 to 16 inches. So depending on where you're at, but once again, reach out to resources in your area and local building codes to find out what your restrictions are. And then failures, I had talked about, 100% coverage. So biggest failure out there is spot bonding. That's the big no-no in either tile and or the paneled stone systems. So you can see the guy who just basically plopped on the back of the on the tile, relied on pressure, and then first expansion and contraction, they started popping off. And then same thing with the one over on the right. The mason basically used his V-notch trowel, went around the perimeter, relied on pressure to keep that up there. First expansion and contraction, they started popping off. So it's very important to have that 100% coverage, and then use the proper setting material. As I said, polymer modified type that's very sticky. And another thing, N and S, I should have mentioned this too earlier. So N and S is designed for stacking like a brick, versus a polymer modified is designed for sticking. So, when we look at that, that's very important on the type of, setting materials you're going to use. And some more failures, I would say peanut butter and jelly. The one over on the left, the guy basically buttered the back of the panel, stuck it to the substrate, first expansion and contraction, it fell off. When you I had mentioned peanut butter and jelly, you butter one side, a piece of bread, you try to stick it to a dry piece, it's not going to stick. You butter one, you butter the other, you have to peel them apart. So that's why it's very important to have that 100% coverage. And then the ones over on the right too, there were several things going on with this project. Actually, this was one of mine. The substrate wasn't sound. It was a hot summer day. The installer basically spot bonded. The architect had called me and said, hey, your tile's failing. This is actually a limestone. And it's kind of nice. So I talked about single sourced partners. So actually this was a Laticrete project where the Laticrete rep and myself with the architect went out to the field. We examined the project. Clearly it was installed improperly, but having a nice relationship with Laticrete, we were able to Actually, Latacrete stepped up and supplied the new material, actually provided the new mortar. So it's important to have a single source, whoever you're working with, to have a nice relationship with them, with your manufacturer and your single source systems. Some more failures. I had talked about, not hard installing against like a vent, anywhere you have movement, expansion and contraction, heat, just to make sure you allow for that movement. And then the one in the center, basically, it rusts over time. So basically there must have been some moisture getting behind, either through the roof or something like that. So, you just have to pay attention to your proper substrates and all that kind of good stuff.
Hey, Linda, just while you're on this topic, we did have a question come in. I'm wondering if you might
Sure.
be okay with addressing it. Just
Sure.
one of our attendees wanted to know if you recommend top down for installation or bottom up.
Bottom up, definitely.
Thank you for that.
So yeah, so actually it's good lead into this. Okay, so you notice over the picture on the bottom, so it shows you the cement board. So they use a ledger sill to start their run. So basically they're gonna get a nice level, ledger sill and then start stacking from there. So this shows you basically cement board. They're gonna clean the substrate. And then we look for kind of a peanut, like kind of a peanut butter consistency. And then what we're looking for is, as I had mentioned earlier, is they're going to burn the mortar in the substrate, key it in with approximately a 1/2 inch trowel, but depending on what you're doing. And then this shows you 100% coverage. So when you're installing panels, you also it's very important to maybe test or pull panels as they're installing to make sure you're getting close to the 100% coverage as possible. So you can see it didn't quite cover the bottom along the ledger sill down there. So he's basically needs to adjust his trowel size. So it's, as an architect designer, when you're visiting these projects, just make sure they're using that 100% coverage, and then maybe have them pull one every now and then, just make sure that they are getting that transfer of mortar from your panel to your substrate, especially exteriorly too. So, as I said, we look close to that, or we try to go as close to 100% coverage as possible. And then here, once again, here's another one. Basically, you're going to burn the mortar in the back of the panel. This is actually a really cool product because it's a pre-assembled panel adhered to a stainless steel. And when you actually squish it to the substrate, the mortar is going to kind of fill the voids and encapsulate around the perimeter of it. So this one, our regular panels, we usually get a 1-point connection, just the mortar on the back. Whereas this one, when you squish it, the mortar is going to kind of fill the voids and encapsulate. So you're getting more of a 5-point connection. And then this just shows you, 100% coverage, wet to wet. And then warranted systems, as I said, work with a manufacturer that has a relationship with another, single sourced systems. So it's important for, to offer warranties and, actually, depending on your substrate, most cement board with a polymer modified, you can get a 15-year warranty. CMU, you can get up to a 25-year warranty. And then grouting options, basically full bed, cultured stone. After you individually put the pieces in, you're gonna have to come back and, come back and grout it, or, bag, fill it in the voids, fill the voids, and or dry stack. You're individually putting the pieces together, trying to figure out what's gonna go where and how to get it to, blend. A prefabricated panel takes the guesswork out of assembly. So it should go up, you install it. I like to see them installed on a running mount on the third. So you're going to kind of stagger your panels on the third. So you're not going to be able to identify your seams like on a brick. And so it's going to go a lot more efficiently than, the other two options. So once again, labor. Don't look at the upfront, look at the overall cost of installation. And then environmental considerations, as I said, stone, you're going to get a longer life cycle costs, and all that kind of good stuff. And then once again, to make sure that you consult your local building codes. And we were talking about expansion joints and grade and all that kind of great stuff. There's some really great resources through the TCNA and your local building codes. And once again, Barmel Institute of America has some great details. The TCNA, as I had said, most paneled systems are, they follow the TCNA of a large format tile. So anything that's under that 15 pounds per square foot, follow that in the recommendations. And then the cool thing about a panelized system, there's numerous types of installations, exteriorly, interiorly. So that's kind of the neat thing. You can clad the outside of the building and bring it on in. As I said, it's hard to pick out the panels on these long runs. As I had mentioned, I like to see running about on the third. So you're going to stagger your panels on the third, bottom up. And then corners, radius work, things like that, going to go up a lot more efficiently. Some of the questions I do get about radiuses. So depending on the radius, depending on the stone too. So as I had mentioned, they range from about a 1/2 inch to 1.5 inches in thickness. So depending on the radius, a typical you can get between like an 8 to 12 foot, 12 to 14 foot radius. With some of the thicker ones, you might need to field cut it and just, to compensate that radius. Also, the stone looks really cool vertically too. We've got some really neat installations where, like on a fire pit, but it's like a 3-foot radius. If you take the panels vertically, you can actually get a nice tight 3-foot radius. Some more exterior shots. Interior, this is kind of fun how they in the field they were able to do that radius and maybe the little decorative work. Interiorly, actually this one shows you that the one that's on the stainless steel mesh, so a little bit larger scale, but it still goes up a lot more efficiently than full bed. And then this one, as I had mentioned too, I think this was in one of the earlier shots too. It's hard to really identify where the panels start and stop. And here's some radius work. So the cool thing about, the paneled system, you can, clad the outside of the building and then bring it on in. Numerous type of, residential, commercial, interior, exterior. There's really a lot of different options. And then with the different stone cuts, mixing, tiles. And when you're looking, as I said, into different manufacturers, look at some of the accessories that they offer, hearth pieces, coordinating sills and all that kind of great stuff. This is actually a really neat project for me personally, and this just tells you the quality of a stone veneer. So this was actually they used 2 different products. There's a charcoal, which is a travertine, and then there's a travertine. It's a slate, excuse me, and then a white birch limestone. So they shipped the panels to a manufacturer that CNC routed out the letters, shipped it back to the job site, and then assembled it on the job. But this just shows you the quality and the consistency of quality manufacturer producing neat profiles. And then the corners, they wrap the corner. Once again, takes the guesswork out. Here's a radius for, actually, this is kind of a cool project. They actually angled it and then it's on a radius too. So there's a lot going on in that one. And then I had mentioned doing radius work vertically, taking the panels vertically. You can get it looks cool too. So all the stones do look really neat vertically also. And then actually this is from a virtualizer. Basically, you can take an image or you can take blueprints, a live picture, upload it in this virtualizer system, plot it, we're going to put the product, and then it uploads onto the image. So it gives the customer a very good perspective on how it's going to look into that space. So that's the kind of the cool thing with reels, or a reels panelized stone veneer. To kind of summarize what we had gone over. So basically, everything's under that 15 pounds per square foot. There's tons of different options. The prefabricated panel goes up a lot more efficiently and fast than natural stone and or cultured stone. It's more durable. Labor costs, we always talk about that, are going to be hopefully less. And then there's numerous types of applications that you can use the paneled stone system. So backsplashes, fireplaces, exteriorly wainscoting. But yeah, so it's just a really neat product. And then you guys will be provided a link to register for the CEU event, and please register for that, and you will get a credit towards that. And then I'm with Realstone Systems. So before I jump in, I don't remember what's after this, but Realstone, we pride ourselves in delivering an awesome panelized stone veneer to the market. We've got numerous stone options. When we talk about our products, we talk about our tolerances. You're not going to find open spaces, gaps, glue. We do test most of our stones, so you can use them exteriorly as well as interiorly. Numerous applications that you can install. We actually have an awesome website that has, there's specking details on there. There's spec sheets that you can send to your customers. It tells you, the quality, the consistency, how it's packaged. And then actually there's some really neat videos too that we offer that shows installation information, how we come about our different products. So there's some really neat stuff on our website that you can access. In addition to, I was talking about partners, our long spec is called out. We actually have an architectural document with Revit, Seamless, hatch patterns, all that kind of great stuff. And we've actually partnered up with Ladder Creek in this system. So that's what we recommend for setting materials. And, they've got all the details, and we refer to them for all installation information. But and it just shows you basically we've got tons of different options, hearth pieces. I mentioned too at the beginning, we have 3 panel types, our regular 6x24 panel, in addition to our quarter units. It's a married set over on the left. And then our panel, it's called a natural end, which is kind of cool too. It's actually chiseled on each of the 6-inch rise. So let's say you're dining on a wall. It's a naturally chiseled edge. And then we do have coordinated hearth pieces with a lot of our different stone veneers. And then this just shows you, as I said, our quality, our consistency. I would say it's consistent and consistency product because it's very consistent around the perimeter, but each piece varies per piece. And then our packaging, we individually wrap each piece in the box. The boxes are banded. We have identification codes on the boxes. But we are very customer service oriented. If you ever have any issues, we're here. Just pick up the phone, someone will answer. And then, as I said, everything is, we've got the details, the specking details, all the design tools that you need to incorporate that in some of your projects, or most of your projects. You want me to keep going?
I'll jump in there for a quick second, Linda. I did see another question come in. And thank you again. The presentation's phenomenal. Thank you for sharing all of these images and pictures and information. It's been really really informative. One of our attendees just wanted a little clarification back on the installation question.
Sure.
Regarding installation from the bottom up. They had heard that you need to work in portions from the bottom up to keep the materials wet when applied. Can you comment on that a little bit, perhaps?
Well, basically, as you're installing, it's kind of hard to, let's see, how would I explain this? So basically, as you're installing, you want to keep a wet mortar as you move. So you don't want to walk away after, let's say, 20 or 30 minutes. Just keep a clean substrate and then just go, maybe do 20 feet at a time. So, you do 1 row or 2 rows at a time. And then if you need to walk away, but I don't let your mortar set up or anything like that. I think your open time, depending on your mortar, you can probably get 30 minutes out of it, or 40, depending on what it is. But you just, as I said, bottom up, and then, with these mortars, they're directly adhering. So they're gonna, there's no anchors required. So you can actually just walk away from, I don't know if that answers your question or not, but you just don't want to go too far and then stop and have mortar on your substrate and or mortar on your panel itself. You don't want that to set up. So basically you just want the mortar on the face of on the back side of your panel, and then your substrate. Try to keep the mortar, so you don't want it. It's a dry stack, so it's installed very tightly together. So as I said, make sure if you walk away, you clean that mortar off your substrate first.
That's great. Other than that, I think you've been so informative that our questions have been nice and quiet. I've been able to take care of anything technical. So yeah, you're all good on the questions area right now. Thanks, Linda.
Okay, awesome. As I said, it's hard to talk to a screen and not, seeing people or doing anything like that. So anyway, the cool thing about Realstone, back to Realstone. So we have specific depending on the profile, we have specific hatch patterns. And if you notice little boxes up at the top of the corner, so those are also very informative. It tells you the weight, it tells you the gauge, it tells you how things are packaged. So those, as I said, Realstone, I think we do an awesome job letting the whoever's speccing our products know all the details. And then we, as I had mentioned too, we have, Revit, seamless, all that kind of good stuff. So we're very commercial focused, architecturally focused. So we have the testing behind all of our products. So this is actually our Alicia line coming out of our Mexican quarry. We actually have two marbles. One is in a ledge stone, which is a split face and or a smooth dimensional honed option. But once again, we were talking about, you can take the same stone and just put it in different cuts, so it gives you a different look. So kind of a neat, as I said, this one's coming out of Mexico. Also, Realstone, we've kind of diversified our offerings. We're not just a panelized stone veneer anymore. We have tiles that coordinate, some really neat subway tiles and things like that. We've partnered up with a new designer, Aaron Adams, that's producing some really wonderful products too. But, and then in addition to, I was just talking, we have coordinating tiles that go with our products. So you can use them vertically, horizontally. Our typical 6x24 or 12x24, 3/8 of an inch thick. This is also a good reference. This must be an older presentation, but if we have an easy way to remember, if we have some accessories like a hearth piece that coordinates with it, if we have a tile, we have a coordinating hearth piece. So I always tell people that's an easy way to remember if we have hearth pieces to coordinate with our different stones. And then once again, those boxes up there, there's some great information in there. And then this is our collection series. This is probably our #1 trending stone. This is limestone, travertine, granite. So these are a little bit more dense stones. So we're able to, as I had mentioned, manipulate them into different formats. So we will do custom projects too. So if a customer, so when we call out different profiles, we have like a shadow stone, an accent stone, a thin stone. So when we're talking about different products, we have different profiles. So this is what we stock, and this is what is readily available. We also will do custom projects too. So a customer, I've had several that, let's take pewter hone and put it in an accent profile. As long as you have a little bit lead time, we can manufacture that and fairly decent square footage, maybe 500 square feet or something like that. But that's kind of the neat thing about we will do custom projects too. And then this one's actually called Shadow Stone. So I always tell people, if you're in a tight budget, go to Shadow Stone. It's kind of a basic 5-row stone, and then the different hatch patterns. And then it tells you in those little boxes the stone type, how it's packaged, the weight. So there's some really good information in those boxes. And then this one's called Accent Stone. If you notice, it has the 3 larger pieces in the profile, so a little bit more surface area. This is actually a bed face stone, so it's like the bed of the floor, like a slate tile. And that's kind of the cool thing. So like Sierra here on the bottom right, that's a basic 5-row, and we've taken that same stone and put it in the accent profile. So that one's called Sierra Accent. So that's kind of the neat thing. We can take that same stone and just manipulate it to different formats to give different looks. And then thin stone means there's more pieces in that 6-inch rise. Really neat product too. Once again, all the information's up in that top little box. And then we have a state stone, and I had shown some pictures of this earlier. Really, really awesome product. So our other products, we have specific hatch patterns, whereas this, it's also under that 15 pounds per square foot. It's actually adhered to a stainless steel mesh, and then we use a low VOC bond to bond it together. But the cool thing about it is it's a pre-assembled panel, very consistent around the perimeter, but each piece varies per piece. So you're getting that random look without the labor of installation. And then the corner is really cool because it actually wraps the corner to look like a full bed. So the guy pulls it out of the box, skims the back of the substrate or skims the substrate, keys it in, butters the back of the panel wet to wet. And then the mortar is going to kind of fill the voids and encapsulate around the perimeter of the panels. So really neat. This is actually our #1 trending stone because it goes up really fast and efficiently. And then we have hearth pieces, sills, wall caps that all coordinate with it. So a really neat product. And then this is our Portugal collection out of Portugal, but I always say this is a little bit more designer oriented. They're actually 2 limestones and two marbles. One's in a dimensional and then the flat format, but it has like a texture to it too. So you get 3 random pieces per square foot. So a lot of design flexibility with this guy. So you can, put it in a herringbone, match up the banding. So some really fun things that you can do with it. In addition to, there's a 2, 4, and a 6-inch trim piece for banding, trimming things out. Anyway, once again, the box is at the top of the page. And then this is another really awesome product too. It's called the Hive. This is actually an engineered stone. So it's actually 90% marble dust, 10% resin, has 0 plasticity. It's UV, fire, and acid resistant. So interior, exterior. This is really cool because it's actually approximately an 8-inch hexagon. You get a convex and a concave, so it's a dimensional. But once again, all the information is at the top of the page. Kind of fun and unique. And then made out of that same product, it's a little bit flatter material. It looks like a wood, basically, but it's a stone, a wood that looks like stone. Very durable. Once again, it's UV stable, interior, exterior. With this, actually, the Hive and the antique wood are, you can't use a regular thin set with this. So it's non-porous. You have to use an epoxy-based mortar to set this, or there's some other construction adhesive. Bostik makes one called, I think it's Grab and Climb or something like that. Anyway, it's more of a construction adhesive that allows for expansion and contraction. So exteriorly, you can just construction adhesive to that. But it goes up a lot more efficiently than, and the durability of it, it's UV stable. And then it's cool because it's actually a prefabricated panel, approximately 12 by 24. And then the corners are sold independently. So they actually lock into one another. So another neat product. As I said, Realstone, we're just not a stone cladding company anymore. We've kind of diversified our offerings. And then this is actually a real wood. So we've actually taken some scraps from, there's old teak scraps from, I can't remember what it's from, but we put it in a panel format. And there's an unfinished, a multi, and then a dark version. Once again, it's a pre-assembled. This is actually interior ambient temperature only, so no high direct heat. But once again, goes up very fast and efficiently. As I had mentioned too, we've got video links and things like that to help with installation. And then I also talked about, some of our tiles that we've launched too. So this is actually a really neat product too. It's called Tempered, which is designed by Erin Adams, who's based out of Austin, Texas. Really fun lady, but basically these are really neat because they're actually stone tiles. So it's either a sandstone or a black limestone. So each piece is one of a kind. So there's a pigmented resin with a foil, and then there's actually a stone with leather infused on top. So it's very dimensional and it's all one of a kind type pieces. This is interior ambient temperature only too. And then kind of fun too, there's pencils that coordinate with it too. And then we've come out with some different mosaics, and then also a new marble line called Marmos, which is like a Turkish marble, really fun, kind of a modern look. Sea chain that's really cool. The Lure, the Fairmont collection, the Fairmont collection. The one on the left is a stainless steel, so interior, you can use it in the shower. The one in the center is a Subway, that's actually a brass in the center, so a little Pantene. And the other small little hex. But once again, all the details, as I said, we're very architectural focused with having everything you need to spec our products. And then this one's called Slant Stitch, which is a vitrified tile, which is basically it's a clay and a quartzite, so it's very dense. Great thing about this product too, it's a US product, but it has a commercial rating. class 4 hardness. It's the DCOF, but it has as I said, it's resistant to fade. Also designed by Aaron. We stock those 4 colors, but they will do some custom colors, like if you want to match Pantene colors, things like that. So it's a great option for commercial projects. Just if you're looking for that whimsical look, very fun. And then we are just now launching a new glass mosaic line, actually designed by Aaron. This is actually from a Mexican manufacturer that's been in actually 3rd generation artisans of glass blowing, and they use actually 3 types of techniques: multi, vitreous, and the flat glass technique. So we brought in 3 different lines. There's the trends, the multi, and the mineral collection. Most of it you can use interiorly, exteriorly. Some you can use submerged, but really neat product is all, it's just not your typical glass mosaic. Really intense colors. It's a through body, so it has the durability. The trends is actually paper face, so you can submerge it into pools and things like that. But absolutely beautiful line. If anyone wants samples, we're just now launching it, and we've got it in a couple locations right now, but really a beautiful product line. And that's about what I have for you guys. I don't know if you're still there or not, or I'm just talking to no one.
No, we've got a good group with us here today, Linda. And yeah, you've been covering everything. I've noticed a few times you've actually answered some questions I've thought of as you've gone. So it might be the same with the audience. I haven't seen any new ones come in. We'll give them a few minutes in case they think of anything. A few moments, rather.
And then back to installation, as I said, basically we follow the TCNA guidelines of a large format tile. And I always, people ask, well, what's a large format? Anything over 8 inches in one direction qualifies for a large format tile. So, and we preach 100% coverage, wet to wet, looking for, as I said, that 100% coverage is where, spot bonding, we see failures. But there's we've got a great partner in Latta Creek that has all the details, for your different EFIS and weep systems and all that kind of great stuff too. So we do have all those details and files available, and we have a really nice architectural document that references all that.
That's great. A few comments, but they're just thank yous. Thanks for an awesome presentation. Thank you, very informative, and really appreciate everything you shared with us today.
Thank you. And I'm sorry I was getting winded, and it's talked to no one. So as I said, I got a little nervous there, but as I said, thanks for bearing with me, and hope everyone enjoyed it. And as I said, Realstone, we've got a wonderful website. If you have, if inquiries, please reach out. We have, inventory across the country, so we've got plenty of stock availability. And as I said, we're just an awesome company. But I think as I mentioned, we're the leader in the industry of the panelized stone veneer.
Yeah, and for any attendees of the MSL virtual event, be sure to swing by the Realstone virtual booth. They've got some additional videos in there that you can go check out some of these products that Linda was talking about today, along with a great opportunity to reach out and connect with the other Realstone team members that are part of the virtual event. Other than that, unless there's anything else, Linda, I think we're good. We're free to go.
All right, awesome.
Without anything, yeah, go ahead. You can finish up. I'll let you wrap up.
I was going to say, well, awesome. Well, thank you, everyone, and appreciate the time. And I hope you learned a little something. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to anyone at Realstone. We'd be happy to help.